Hello race fans, welcome back to the Peter MacKay Motorsport Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. First of all, I must start the programme with an apology for those who were regular listeners to the Peter MacKay Motorsport Podcast. We've been on a bit of a break for the last couple of months. The last episode where I had the great pleasure of interviewing the Rapid Dutchman, Jeroen Blekemolen. I've been very, very busy over the last couple of months. I've been up commentating at Knockhill Racing Circuit, presenting the Porsche Sport Podcast, and also commentating nearly every night in the sim racing world as well, so which has been a whole lot of fun. But I really am missing doing the podcast, so I thought what better way to get back going again than, well, this weekend's World Rally Championship season finale, where, well, we're sitting on the eve of what could be a historical moment for British motorsport, because Elfyn Evans, the Welshman, currently goes into the final round of the championship with a 14-point advantage over his Toyota teammate Sébastien Ogier, the six-time world champion. And of course, in the United Kingdom, we are obviously fanatical about rallying, particularly in places like Wales and in Ireland as well. But we've only had two Drivers' World Champions in our history. Of course, who could forget 25 years ago, more or less to the day, that the late great Colin McRae won the World Championship for ProDrive and for Subaru. Who can forget the images of him and his co-driver Derek Ringer spinning round and doing donuts in the 555 Subaru Impreza. And then fast forward in 2001 when Richard Burns and again Colin McRae went head-to-head at the final round at Wales Rally GB to decide who would be the 2001 World Rally Champion. And, you know, you couldn't get two more different characters. Colin, wild, flat out everywhere, driving the then quite new Martini liveried Ford Focus. And you also had the more quiet, calm, reserved, considered, thinking driver that was Richard Burns. And of course his co-driver, the fellow Scot Robbie Reid, who's actually hails from not too far away from my hometown of Perth. And it was an amazing showdown, but in the end, Colin McRae had a spectacular accident, which put him out of the reckoning, and Richard went on to win the championship again in a Subaru Impreza. Now, Elfyn, of course, Subaru sadly long gone from the World Rally Championship. They unfortunately left the World Rally Championship in the midst of the global financial crisis in 2008. But they have been replaced by another, in fact, a much bigger Japanese manufacturer in the form of Toyota, who themselves have an amazing history in rallying. And Toyota's return to the World Rally Championship since 2017, when the new rule set came in, has been incredibly successful. Of course, last year, Ott Tanak winning the championship for the Japanese marque, and this year with a whole new driver lineup. Last year they had Chris Meek, Ott Tanak, and Jari-Matti Latvala, all of whom left the team either by choice of the driver or by the team. So Toyota and their team manager Tommi Mäkinen had to put together a whole new driver lineup for the 2020 season, and which consisted of Elfyn Evans, Sébastien Ogier, and the new, young superstar, the young Finn Kalle Rovanperä, son of Harry Rovanperä, who of course would have raced against Richard Burns and Colin McRae. And all told, the new driver lineup have done pretty well at Toyota, and they head into the final round of the championship with Ogier 14 points behind his teammate Elfyn Evans, and Ogier 10 points ahead of third place man Thierry Neuville in the first of the Hyundais. Ott Tanak, of course, made the shock move from his championship winning Toyota Yaris to the Hyundai i20 for the 2020 season, which was a shock to many. And unfortunately, it started off in the worst possible way, where Ott Tanak had one of the biggest accidents I think I've ever seen in all my time watching rallying, where he went off at the season opening Monte Carlo rally, and he's kind of been on the back foot since then. But he comes into the final round of the championship with a very much an outside chance, but still mathematically possible. So it's all happening, but of course, the elephant in the room is it has been a strange 2020 for everybody, and thus a strange WRC season. Of course, we started off in Monte Carlo, then on to Sweden, and then to Mexico. And actually, Mexico, so fluid was the global pandemic at that point that Mexico was actually the event started but finished a day early to get teams and drivers and personnel home safely before the global lockdown ensued. And then it was nearly a 6-month wait for the drivers to get back out again, where they went to Turkey, Sardinia, and also to Estonia. The return, the birth of the World Rally Championship in Estonia, and given the quality of roads and the rallying, the fanatic nature of the Estonian people towards rallying, and of course their hero Ott Tänak, it was brilliant to take the championship to Estonia, and I sincerely hope that becomes a permanent fixture on the World Rally Championship calendar, because it was an excellent event. But after Sardinia, more problems hit with cancellations and restrictions and what have you. We're all bored with the story, aren't we? But the World Rally Championship organisers, who I'm sure have had the busiest year in their careers, managed to come up with 2 events to finish the championship, which was Ypres Rally in Belgium and the Monza Rally on the famous Monza circuit in Italy. Now, the Ypres rally had been due to finish the season with the season's power stage being on the famous Spa-Francorchamps, so would have been an incredible event, but unfortunately Ypres had to be cancelled due to obvious reasons. So that left Rally Monza. Now, every year the Monza Rally Show is held and has boasted many celebrity drivers, including the great Valentino Rossi, but it's very much what we would refer to as a circuit rally, where a number of short special stages are set up around the grounds of a race circuit, a permanent race circuit. We see them at my home circuit at Knockhill as well, the circuit rallying. It's a very common and popular form of the sport at club level, but not ever really seen at world level. However, the ingenuity and the flexibility and the tenacity of the World Rally Championship as a whole have created an event which I think is going to be incredibly exciting. We're going to have 241 competitive kilometres, which is relatively short for a World Rally Championship event. But we're going to start tomorrow, Thursday afternoon, Thursday the 3rd of December, in the at 2 o'clock local time. The drivers will take in the first couple of stages at Monza. Then again on Friday, they'll come back to the Monza circuit and do a succession of stages with short service periods in between. But then on Saturday is where it gets really interesting. On Saturday, they head north of the circuit, up into the mountains near Lake Como, and we're going to see 6 stages on what was tarmac, a week ago, but now covered in snow. And this is throwing everything into already what was quite an uncertain event for drivers. Of course, a brand new event is always uncertain, but one where it's got quite a heavy amount of circuit rallying element, and then obviously new stages up in the mountains. But for those to now be covered in snow adds a whole new element to the event and kind of turns it into a mini Monte Carlo. Now, it goes without saying that whose hands is that going to play into? Well, Sébastien Ogier, who's won the event more than anyone else in the field, and he is very much the master of Monte Carlo. So I'm sure Sébastien Ogier is sitting in his home in Switzerland right now, or I'm sure he'll be at the event now, but I'm sure he was sitting in his home in Switzerland watching the snow falling in Italy and thinking, well, that'll do me. That'll do me for sure. So we're going to see on Saturday is the big day. 6 stages on the snow, ice, tarmac, whatever the drivers find, and that is going to be, I'm sure, where the title is won or lost. Then on Sunday we have the circuit. They come back to do a few stages at Monza circuit. But as we know, the power stages, the last stage of the rally, offers up a maximum of 5 championship points, going 5 for the fastest, 4 for the second fastest, 3 for the third fastest, and so on, down to 1 point for fifth fastest. Now, the championship is so close that the power stage points, I think, are going to play into it. I think that 15-kilometre stage at Monza on Sunday afternoon could be critical as well. If Elfyn Evans and Sébastien Ogier go into the last day or into that last stage even, and if Ogier is leading by just a couple of positions, those power stage points could swing the championship one way or the other. And for me, I think this is an amazing opportunity. Obviously, there's been a lot of problems and a lot of difficulties for global sport, but also for motorsport as well. And rallying is probably a sport that's really been hit the hardest. I mean, rallying is not a sport that depends on doesn't depend on fans buying tickets to events. I know that at Wales Rally GB there are a number of zones where you have to pay to get into and what have you, but in general, rallying fans climb their own way into the forests, to the roadsides, and that's their right to be there, unlike paying to go to the Formula 1 Grand Prix at Silverstone, for example. So in one way, from a monetary point of view, that hasn't been such a problem. But obviously the proximity of having a driver and a co-driver in a car, that was a social distancing issue to begin with, which they managed to get over. But rallying is a sport which has really been hurt by it, like any category of motorsport. But rallying has had a whole set of challenges anyway over the last few years in terms of fan engagement and how you get the sport in front of people, because I'm convinced that rallying, there is nothing more spectacular than a Sébastien Ogier or a Thierry Neuville or an Elfyn Evans driving a World Rally car at speed through a gravel track through a forest. It is just incredible. And for car manufacturers to show that their products have sporting credentials, they have durability, and soon, come 2022, will be powered by alternative powertrains as well with a hybrid system. So rallying has a lot of going for it, but it's getting it in front of people that's the issue. Now, as you can tell, I am a complete motor racing nerd. That is my life. I love motor racing. It's the most important thing to me, and it's why I've made it my career. But even I would really have to make quite a sacrifice and commitment to watch every single stage of every single rally of every single season. And that is where the problem lies. A lot the nature of the sport is quite difficult to make it TV friendly. Yes, you see various TV companies will condense into a highlights program, but they can become quite homogenous, in my opinion, and could be improved and could shine more on the drivers' personalities. But that is very much a job of everyone involved in the sport to help draw that story and to create that story that no doubtedly exists underneath the surface. But for me to have the possibility of a 15-kilometre power stage in a place like Monza, which of course means a lot to non-rallying fans, don't forget, I think there's a great opportunity to use that almost winner takes all showdown format. There is a real opportunity here for the sport to showcase what it's all about, and that race against the clock. It's a very simple formula. It's a time. Same car down a piece of road, fastest wins. Very simple. No KERS, no what have you, no DRS, nothing like that. It is a very simple, pure form of the motorsport. Now I know the absolute rally bobbleheads, as they're often referred to, as big diehard rally fans will think that this is sacrilege and it's not a proper rally. Well, newsflash, the world has moved on, and the way in which sport is consumed, it's got to be appealing to more audience, and it's got to be eye catching. It's got to grab attention, and there's lots of different ways that can be done. And also, if you look at even in the motor racing press, you look at the dominance of Formula One, whether it's interesting to watch at the moment or not. Formula One still has a dominance, but it didn't always have that dominance. If you look back to when Colin won his title, and when you look back to when Richard Burns won his title in 2001, the motorsport press, and people know who I'm referring to here, motorsport press went absolutely bananas. And in fact, even when they won a rally, the motor racing press went bananas and got the front page of big publications, etc. That is not the case today. So that is something that we need to change, and we need to make rallying a really exciting proposition for the motoring press to write about and to cover, and also for their general readers to be engaged with and to take part in. So I think what we've got on, some people might see the programme that we've got for this weekend as a negative. I don't. I think it's an absolute positive as well. But let's wind back a bit. Let's see how we got here. Last time out, we were in Sardinia, and the rally was won by the Spaniard Dani Sordo, who runs a part-time programme with the Hyundai World Rally Team. Their regular drivers, Thierry Neuville and Ott Tanak, go to every event, and then they have a third car which is circulated amongst a number of part-time drivers. One of those has been Craig Breen, and one of those has also been Sebastian Loeb. But Dani Sordo won his second Sardinia rally in a row after 6 months out of competitive action, which was incredibly impressive. And Dani Sordo is going to be in that third car this weekend at Monza. And for Hyundai's assault on the Manufacturers' Championship, which interestingly they lead by 7 points, I think Dani Sordo's presence in this sort of event could be absolutely critical. But let's talk about Elfyn Evans. How has he got to this point? You know, there's a lot of people who might say, oh, he doesn't, this has only been what's going to be a 7 rally season, as opposed to what we normally have, 13 or 14 rally season. And a lot of people say, no, it won't mean the same, it's not as deserved. To me, that's utter nonsense, in my humble opinion. I think all the drivers have had exactly the same opportunity, and in fact, actually, that this sort of unpredictability and this championship that's required adaptability, you know, at the end of the day, the guys with the most experience are the guys with the advantage, because they've had so many more. If you put it in the perspective of a pilot, you talk about flying hours, racing hours is the same. And you know, the simple fact of the matter is that Thierry Neuville, Ott Tanak, and particularly Sebastian Ogier have more experience at the top level than Elfyn does. Elfyn is an experienced driver, just not as experienced as those he's going up against. But he has been the man who has consistently delivered throughout the championship, and he's the only man who can say that. You know, Neuville has had his issues, Tanak has had his issues, and so has Sebastian Ogier. And it was at Rally Turkey where the real turning point happened, where Elfyn Evans won the rally while all of his competitors hit problems. Now, Rally Turkey is a properly tough rally. It's incredibly tough on the drivers, the cars. It's a car breaker. It smashes up cars. Even these brutally tough, brutally expensive World Rally machines, they get obliterated at Rally Turkey. And Elfyn Evans managed that challenge the best of all and won the rally. The Monte Carlo rally, the first rally of the season. Don't forget, the first rally with Toyota for Elfyn Evans, his first competitive event in the Yaris WRC, which is a very different car to the Fiesta WRC that he'd come from, and he got it on the podium, finished third. Unbelievable performance. Then we went to Sweden, rallying in Sweden on a very unusual Sweden with higher temperatures, not as much snow, a lot of gravel coming up through the surface. He went and won it. And then in Mexico, he finished fourth, again bagging a load of points. Finished fourth in Estonia and fourth in Sardinia. So he's never been out the top 4, and the only guy in the championship who can say that, and that is the secret. He's had 2 wins, 3 podiums across tarmac, snow and gravel. And that is what winning a World Rally Championship is all about. And if he I paraphrase slightly, but to quote the late great Colin McRae's father Jimmy, who recently was interviewed and said, if Elfyn Evans were to go on and win the World Championship at Monza this weekend, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. And I couldn't echo those sentiments more enough. And I'm sure Evans' father Gwyndaff, Elfyn Evans' father Gwyndaff, of course former British champion, will be delighted as well. And he's been very much involved in the whole rise of Elfyn Evans. But before we move on from Elfyn, and with his 14-point advantage, he goes into Monza as the favourite, but still with a big job to do. But I want to make a big mention to Malcolm Wilson, the owner of M Sport, the company that were employed in the mid-1990s to take on Ford's factory World Rally Championship programme, and had a lot of success, of course, with the Escort and then various iterations of the Ford Focus, and then developed the new Ford Fiesta WRC, which then in 2017 went on to 2 Drivers' World Championships with Sébastien Ogier. But for a number of years, Malcolm Wilson put a lot of personal effort, time and money into ensuring Elfyn Evans had opportunities. And throughout Elfyn Evans' growth, he had a lot of difficulties and had to be, and sometimes had been demoted back into the British Rally Championship by Malcolm Wilson. But Malcolm had made sure that Elfyn was always, his career was always managed in the correct way, and put in a huge amount, as I say, a huge amount of personal investment in time and money through his company, M Sport. And just as Elfyn was really starting to flourish over the last couple of years, starting to win rallies, getting on the podium regularly, he then, just as all of Malcolm's investment is about to pay off, he gets picked up by the best team in the paddock, by Toyota, with the biggest budget, don't forget. And that's something that, bearing in mind that although there is a Ford badge on the front of the M Sport Fiesta, make no mistake, that is a private entry. They might get a little bit of support, but no more than a commercial sponsor, for example. Hyundai and Toyota, those are backed from the very, very top of 2 gargantuan organisations. The current head of Toyota, the big boss in Toyota, Mr. Toyota, is Rally Daft, and thus his signature is it goes on the colossal budget required for Toyota's World Rally Championship programme. To give you a small example, both Hyundai and Toyota have been testing in Monza, while M Sport have not, and that will be purely down to the costs involved. So we must salute Malcolm Wilson for his part in Elfyn Evans' legacy, and I'm sure Malcolm will be immensely proud of Elfyn if he's able to go on and do the job. But who is Elfyn Evans up against? Well, he's up against one of the finest racing drivers, not just rally drivers, one of the finest racing drivers of all time, the 6-time world champion Sébastien Ogier. And Sébastien Ogier, he took on the mantle from the great Sébastien Loeb, who won 9 world titles, and took it on and won 4 titles in a row with Volkswagen, and then moved to M Sport when Volkswagen basically pulled the plug at the very last moment. And within a matter of weeks, Sébastien Ogier and Malcolm Wilson had be able to come to some kind of arrangement to be able for him to go and drive there. And he went on to win 2 world titles with M Sport, which I think is just absolutely exceptional, an exceptional story as well. But, after a pretty difficult year at Citroën last year in 2019, which did not go to plan for all concerned, Sébastien Ogier moved across to Toyota, where he's been this year, and he appears to be pretty comfortable. And it would appear to me also that Sébastien Ogier thrives in the environment where he drives for a team boss who has competed at the highest level. At Ford, he was incredibly complimentary of Malcolm Wilson's management style, and said that Malcolm Wilson was his favourite boss that he'd ever had. And of course, Malcolm raced in Group B in the Metro 6R4, and raced at a very high level in the Ford Escort as well, and most memorably for me, the Ford Escort RS Cosworth in Michelin pilot livery, and that was my first ever Scalextrics car I had. So my very earliest rallying memory was seeing Malcolm blast by at Scone Palace in the Scottish Perth Rally back in either 93 or 94. I can't quite remember. Must have been 94. And that sticks with me. I can still picture that car blasting by through now. So it's, and now, of course, certainly up until the end of this season, Sébastien Ogier is in the Toyota fold, is racing for Tommi Mäkinen, who's been the team manager since the beginning of that Toyota project back in 2017. And I am absolutely convinced that Sébastien Ogier thrives in an environment where he has the guidance, or he is his boss is someone who's been there and done it and knows what it's like to compete at that level. And of course, Tommi Mäkinen to win at that level 4 times a consecutive world champion himself. So for Ogier, he's still very much in the battle. If he's able to win the power stage, that's 5 points straight away. And then it all comes down to where he finishes in relation to Elfyn Evans. It's so close. 14 points might sound a lot. It really isn't. It could take a very small twist of fate for that championship to turn on its head, and it could well turn on its head back and forth throughout the weekend. But during this week, Sébastien Ogier made a very, very interesting point, and he said that the snow in Monza, which we are getting, and have seen pictures of the recce today of the drivers doing their pre-event recce in pouring snow, a lot of snow on the roads there. He said that the snow at Monza could make him champion. And that is a very interesting statement to make, I think, because as I mentioned before, Sébastien Ogier's credentials on Rally Monte Carlo are absolute. He is one of the greatest drivers of all time in that event. He's won more Rally Monte Carlo than anyone in the field, and if that looks like what we're gonna get at the weekend. So Sébastien Ogier is going in. He doesn't have the pressure. He's won it 6 times before, and this is a critical point. He will be coming back for 2021 with Toyota. He had said that 2020 was going to be his last season, but given the shortened nature and the strange nature of this particular year here in 2020, he decided to extend his contract for 1 more year. Will it stay 1 more year? Well, who knows? We'll see what happens in 2021. But I think for Sébastien Ogier, that's really going to take the pressure off his shoulders, because he's got 6 championships behind him. He's got nothing to prove. Plenty of money in the bank, no problem, and he knows that he's coming back next year for a full season. So he's going into to Rally Monza with with his shoulders relaxed, and he can just go for it. And that is something that Elfyn Evans will know. He will have studied it. He will be ready. But Elfyn Evans is the man who'll be going in anxious. He'll be going in nervous. He will not be relaxed. Nobody could be. If Sébastien Ogier was in his boots, he wouldn't be. So I think it's going to be a fascinating contest over the weekend, and you can catch all of it on the WRC All Live service. I think they do weekend passes as well, but it's a brilliant service, every stage live, and then they do highlight shows in the evening as well. I'll be watching it, and it's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Thanks so much for listening to this latest episode of the Peter MacKay Motorsport Podcast. And most importantly, thank you for your patience in the delay over the last couple of months, where I'm delighted to say my career has taken a big move forward with lots of new opportunities in the commentary box. And also hosting the Porsche Sport Podcast, who Porsche Sport Limited have been very kind to me, asking me to host that programme, which I co-host with former Formula 3 driver Kat Impey, and we've had a number of very special guests on the show over the last couple of weeks. I'd urge you to go on and have a look at those. But that's what has been keeping me busy over the last few months, and also writing a book as well, which hopefully I'll be able to reveal in the near future. But thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Peter MacKay Motorsport Podcast about this weekend's World Rally Championship season finale, and I'll be back to you very soon with another episode. Thanks for listening.